most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." These words were spoken by Nelson Mandela, and they testify to the power and influence that education can have in our world. Like Mr. Mandela, I believe that education is the great equalizer. No matter what life has given you as a starting point, education can work to change and to make a difference. It can change you and change from a path of poverty and give you a chance of opportunity. Now, it is no secret that the American school system is not perfect. Even though we have the most prestigious universities in the world, it is known that kids are still struggling. And today we're going to analyze the educational gap in the United States, identify the sources of the issue, explain the benefits of education, solutions, and improvements that we can make. It's specifically focusing on the kids that are classified under minority status. Now, it is known that all minority students seem to struggle, but today we'll be focusing mainly on the Hispanic students because they are the fastest growing minority group and also the largest. Now, one of the main proponents to this is in October 2012, there were a calculated 134,000 Hispanic students that were dropping out, not completing their mandatory 4 years education. And that ratio comes out to be completion dropout rate of 5 to 1. Now that means that for every 5 students that graduated, there was at least 1 that dropped out. Now that may not seem like a big number, but if you put that into perspective, out of all the people in this classroom, who would not be here? Now compare that to the 12 to 1 among white students. That number by itself is a great issue that we should also be concerned with. And I also just put that up there to contextualize the difference between the different races. And this was according to the Pew Hispanics Research and Trends Project. Another proponent is the unavailability of post-secondary education. Only 56% of 18 to 24-year-olds that's the prime age range for for students to be in college and are actually enrolled. And out of that, only 11% will graduate from a 4-year college. Only 11% will graduate from a 4-year college. Now that goes to testify that there is a large amount of enrollment, but then there's a very low rate of graduation. A big proponent of the problem that minority students have is the fact that inner city schools don't perform as well as other schools do. Now, these things attribute to that problem, but they're not limited. Higher concentration of minority students, less available funds, state and private, and lower performance on standardized testing are all things that are attributed to inner city schools. Curtis Graham, a leader in this type of research, said these kids don't have adequate facilities to grow up in a healthy manner. Parks aren't well kept, streets are dirty, and above all, the education they are offered is inexcusably poor. Legislation passed in 2001 called No Child Left Behind gutted the bilingual education programs that we have in our schools. Now they are still existent today, but they were cut down drastically. And this legislation also changed the way that schools are funded. For example, a lot of the funding is based solely on test scores, standardized test scores, and many things can go wrong with that. And that factor alone is not enough to rate a school as being good or not. Also, that attributes to teacher evaluation. I don't think that a teacher should be evaluated based solely on whether a kid was able to pass a test or not. Now, benefits of higher education. Now, these are things that we need to spread to the youth and to make them informed that this is worth it, that those 4 extra years or 2 extra years, whatever you want, is worth it. First, social mobility. Social mobility being the ability to move through the financial classes and socioeconomic classes. For example, working class to middle class to upper class. Economic opportunity. It is a well-known statistic that people who have any sort of education beyond 4 years make more money. Also, surplus spending and stimulating the economy. These are creating jobs, high-paying jobs that require education. So you have your doctors and your lawyers, your technical workers, and there's no detriment and no downside to educating our youth. Solutions. Now these are not short-term. It would take a very long time for these solutions to actually take effect, but it's worth the fix. It's worth the effort because this is the next generation. Like I said before, teacher evaluation is a huge, huge problem. Teachers should not be graded on how well the students do on standardized testing, because that promotes them to teach the test rather than the state-mandated curriculum. Educating kids, as I said before, on the importance of higher education, telling them that it is worth it and that they will succeed if they try hard enough. And also financial aid to the most needed inner-city schools. Now I know that changing federal mandate and changing federal budget is a nightmare, and it would take forever to do the proper legislation. But if we can spend so much money on foreign affairs and self-defense and the weapons race, I think that we can allocate some of that money back into our own educations here in the United States. So in conclusion, we saw that there is a high rate of enrollment with low achievement levels. And we also showed that everyone would benefit from an educated populace. There is no detriment to bettering the next generation. And in the words of the great Nelson Mandela, I leave you with, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world.